Hi, here's a May MM2H update, the latest news from Malaysia about the Malaysia May Second Home program. First, the burning issue of when will the visa be reactivated and what are the new terms and conditions. There is really nothing to report on that. Just to remind people, the government employed an outside consulting company to review the program, come up with recommendations, which they did, and they submitted to the Ministry of Tourism quite a few weeks ago. The Minister of Tourism subsequently came out and said she was awaiting cabinet approval to relaunch the program, but since then there has been nothing but silence, so we really have no idea what's happening. We think that's unfortunate because the MM2H visa holders collectively contribute billions of ringgit to the economy, so it would seem to us to make sense to get more people approved and coming into the country with their funds, but the government's not yet willing to do that. So we just have to be patient and see what happens. Some people have asked about the Sarawak MM2H program. Now that is slightly different because Sarawak, like Sabah, control their own immigration and they set their own rules. Their program in Sarawak is primarily targeted at people over 50. It's possible to join at a younger age, but there are conditions attached. The problem is you can't get into Sarawak in order to obtain the visa. So the fact that it's been announced and it's on their website again does not mean that you really have an option to get it. There is also one other problem. If your plan was to live in West Malaysia, you can do that with the Sarawak visa, but you are required to spend 2 weeks a year in the state of Sarawak, which is not a major hardship, but for some people it may be an inconvenience. One thing that did happen in April was the decision that people on social visit passes had to leave the country. Basically, their maximum was 90 days, which is the typical tourist visa, but there was a decision made that they could stay here with expired visas because of all the restrictions on travel around COVID-19. But apparently the government decided that enough was enough and they had to leave. Unfortunately, they're only given 2 weeks to leave, which is okay if you were a genuine tourist, but a lot of people with those visas actually live here. They either had jobs which took them outside the country regularly, or they decided that crossing over into Thailand or Singapore every 90 days wasn't such a big deal. So quite a few of them rented places here and they basically made it their home. Now they've been forced to return to their own countries and they will not be allowed back in again until the borders are open to tourists. So that was a bit of a shock, but the government was well in their right to ask them to leave, of course, because they didn't have residence visas. When it comes to COVID-19, Malaysia is seeing a bit of a surge, which is not good news. They're not alone, but the fact is, as long as they're seeing a number of high cases, then the borders will remain firmly closed. And as we've seen, the people who have an MM2H visa are more heavily penalized than people with some other visas. So it's not clear when they will allow the people from the 23 countries which have been blacklisted to come back into Malaysia. People with employment passes from those countries have been allowed in, but Malaysia May Second Homers are still being denied entry, which again we've appealed on many occasions, but to no avail. So we just have to sit back and be patient. And of course, the big growth in the number of cases in India has made the country take an even harder stand with people from there. They've actually banned flights from India, and at this point, it's virtually impossible for anybody traveling from India to get into Malaysia, although some people are going to intermediary countries and trying to come back through that route. Malaysia has started its vaccinations quite a few weeks ago, but they're moving relatively slowly. They've only vaccinated about 1 million people so far, which if they maintain that rate, it's going to be several years to get everybody vaccinated because we've got 33 million people living in this country. But I'm told that large supply of vaccines will be arriving shortly, and they'll be able to accelerate their efforts. Foreigners, non-citizens, have been told they'll be vaccinated towards the end, although we are hearing of some expats who've already had appointments confirmed to have the government vaccine issued, and that they were in Langkawi, which may mean that there's a lower take up there, or for some other reason why they got taken up very early. The government has dropped the AstraZeneca vaccine from their list of options, and they had 250,000 left over, which they offered to anybody who wanted to volunteer for them, and they were quickly taken up within a matter of a couple of hours. People had booked appointments to have those vaccines. So obviously a lot of people are not afraid, but having said that, apparently there are still half the population of Malaysia has not registered for any vaccine, despite constant urgings from the government to come forward. So it does seem that social media is playing a role in making people quite nervous about taking any vaccine. So where are we at? We're still waiting for the borders to open, and it's not at all clear if that's going to happen anytime soon with all the cases going on. There are some people who are saying it could well be next year before they open up. What we expect to see is that people who've been vaccinated and those people traveling from countries with very low rates of COVID-19 will probably be given priority to come in the country, and we'll start off seeing tourists from those countries or with the vaccinations. But nothing's been announced, nothing's been confirmed, and so we're all sitting patiently by. A lot of people would like to see the border with Singapore opened up, because there's a lot of traffic between Malaysia and Singapore, and also a lot of people have relatives and close friends living in the other country who they haven't seen for a long time. So there is some pressure on the government to open the borders, but so far they've shown themselves to be quite resistant to any demands to ease things. And for the most part, Malaysia has done a pretty good job of controlling the spread of the COVID-19 virus, so it's hard to get too upset from that perspective. Well, that's it for this month. A quick reminder, we publish the Expat magazine. It can be read free of charge on our corporate website, tegmedia.my. You can get news and other information on our general website, expatgo.com. And of course, the MM2H website is still open, but we haven't got a lot of new information to post there. That's mm2h.com. So until next month, stay safe, and hopefully I've got more interesting news to you by the time we get there. Take care. Bye.